Well, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all viewers from all around the world. This is Frank van den Driest from the Institute for Real Growth. The Institute for Real Growth is an institute that has as its purpose to help CMOs and other growth leaders drive more humanized growth by connecting them to best practices, to experts and peers. And that's, again, exactly what these Humanized Growth Series that this next hour is part of intends to do. Today I have with me Elana Rosenfeld, co-founder and CEO of Kicking Horse Coffee. And Kicking Horse Coffee, although not all viewers might know it, because it's not a multinational in the sense of some of the other participants that we had here, but it's a really fascinating company. It started 25 years ago in Elana's garage, and by now, in the past few years, it's been named the best place to work in Canada, the number one most favorite fair trade product, coffee it is. In 2017, Lavazza bought a majority share of Kicking Horse Coffee. And Elana, hi Elana, still is a shareholder, minority shareholder, but very much in charge in the CEO role at Kicking Horse Coffee. In the next hour, Elana and I will talk about a range of topics. We'll talk about passion, we'll talk about purpose, values, culture, values, and growth. And although Elana is not a marketer, she holds very interesting and provocative views and perspectives on marketing. As her co-RRG 100 leadership program participants soon found out, because Elana did join us in the program and added a lot of value to the other participants. So with that, Elana, a very warm welcome. And my first question, as always, is where are you and how are you?
Good morning, Frank. Good morning, everyone. I am in a very small town in British Columbia called Invermere. It's nestled in the Rocky Mountains, and I'm working from home, as many of you are, and I'm doing very, very well. Although this week has been a bit strange. We've had the smoke come up from Western United States, and so it's been a bit apocalyptic without seeing the sun, without seeing our mountains, but it's starting to clear up. And it's very early morning. I was saying to Frank earlier, I must really like all of you very much because I don't normally get up this early. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's super appreciated you made that effort. And well, the smoke, we might touch upon it later because I know you also have a role in Canada's Nature Reserve. I know nature means a lot to you. It's definitely one of the many things we have in common, Elana. This, I've really looked forward. There's always the risk, like your expectations are really high for a conversation. Yeah, well, you know what? Let's dive straight into it. And let's grab the bull right by the horns. And my first question would be to you. You know, we talk about real growth, humanized growth. How do you define growth?
Well, you mentioned nature, and so actually I take my my lessons from nature as I think about growth. And I think in business, we traditionally think of that trajectory of growth, whether new products, new markets, you know, that escalating line on the graph that shows profit and growth, and of course, very important. And so I think of growth as sort of expansion and contraction. And so we're familiar with the typical sort of expansion thoughts to growth. But what interests me is sort of that contraction period, where you work on more of the foundational pieces of business. So whether it comes to your purpose, your values, your culture, your people, sustainability. And to me, that's where the real creativity and the real growth gets created. And like nature, we have great growth in the spring, but there's those periods of pullback in the fall and the winter, and that's where the real foundational work gets done. So that's how I think about growth.
Well, that's obviously very compelling, and it rings very true and authentic. I just mentioned earlier that Lavazza, big Italian coffee maker, acquired an 80% stake in Kicking Horse Coffee. Do they see this as well? Do they agree with you on this definition of growth?
I believe so. We haven't had exactly that conversation, but when I decided to partner with Lavazza, 3 years ago, there was that general alignment on values and culture, and so it felt like a fit. And certainly 3 years later, we're 3 years into our partnership, they have been an absolutely fantastic partner.
Yeah, yeah. But to push a bit further there, contraction and like they made a very undoubtedly a significant financial investment there, and they want to see a return on that. Is it that they have a more longer term perspective and are therefore more open to what you call the period of contraction, whereby the profits and financial results might be less impressive than in other times?
Yeah, well, I think you have to do both. You do have to, earn that trust in terms of growth and profits. I think the alignment is there, and because they are a family-run business, family-owned business, and Italian, and into the fourth generation, they do have that long-term view, and that's why I really enjoyed that perspective, and it's been proven over history.
Yeah, yeah. So Elana, we talked a lot about what we call real growth, which is human-centric, which is about creating values for all the stakeholders, your colleagues, your customers, the communities in which you operate, and the capital markets, to your latter point, for the long term. And when I asked you if you were interested to participate in the Humanized Growth Series, you said, yeah, but what I really want to talk about, what's the part that's most important to me is not the words, is not the talk, but actually getting into action. In the last year, you've spent almost a year with 100 CMOs in our leadership program. When it comes to action, and when you saw these people that are mostly in let's say, Fortune, let's say 1,000 companies, very large, multi-billion-dollar international companies, what is the most important recommendation that you have for them, having observed them and having understood what their challenges are to drive more humanized long-term growth from your perspective?
Well, I find it extremely exciting and inspiring that these conversations are even happening. Because when I got into business 25 years ago, the mainstream conversations of business were definitely not about this. And so I find, this is the beginning point. It's going to take time, and it is an evolution. But it is about really the integrity and the courage of individuals within organizations to ensure that what they say is matched up with actions. And often I hear from people that have worked in corporate or still work in corporate that, the words and the actions don't match. That corporate is, speaking the language and saying what they need to say, and there's the lingo, but, it's not driven down through the organizations, and that it's not real. But when I think about, it's the value of integrity, the actions of integrity, of courage, When I think about, and great example in this program has been, CVS Pharmacy, who took that action of deciding not to sell tobacco within their drugstores. I mean, that was a very bold and courageous decision of forfeiting, billions of dollars of sales and profit to stand by what they said, which was, to empower Americans in their health. And obviously selling tobacco was not aligned with that. So, being able to take a line in the sand and take a bold stance. And then when I think about Kicking Horse Coffee and, the decision that we made a number of years ago to go 100% fair trade, only to buy and sell 100% fair trade coffee and 100% organic coffee. And that was a bold decision that we made. Even though, our suppliers, our brokers were saying it's not possible, the supply is not there, and the market was saying it's too expensive, the retailers, the consumers are going to rebel, and so, we're gonna make that bold move, and we certainly haven't looked back. So it's actions like that really prove and endorse, the words that we use.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned CVS. Actually, next week's Humanized Growth Series participant is Norman de Graaf, who was also a contributor to our program, who's the Chief Marketing Officer of CVS. But the other thing you mentioned, which really struck a chord with me, is about the integrity. And actually, earlier this week, I was in a virtual conference with Satya Nadella from Microsoft, who said almost literally the same thing you said. He said, well, life becomes so much simpler, was actually one of the side benefits of it, when what you think, what you say, and what you do are aligned. And I think that's a really nice way of actually a definition of integrity. Tell me, Elana, and we're going to talk about the Kicking Horse Coffee from the start in just a minute, but is there any moment in time over the past years where you were really challenged on that integrity, where it was because it's so easy to say, think, say, and do aligned, and it's so hard to actually practice. Tell me about a moment where you were really challenged, or where you found it difficult to keep that integrity.
Well, I think we're challenged every day in business. Not always, easy decisions to make. And I think about, our values, and our values really drive our behaviors. And it's not sometimes, what you have to decide on, but it's how you're going to do it. And so with our growth, I think we were challenged over the past year. We changed our whole route to market in Canada and the United States. And we had to switch from an old model, some very old partnerships that we had over 20 years of distributors, salespeople who have worked for us. And, that was a difficult moment for Kicking Horse to make that change, to continue in growth. But it was certainly, the question was, we have to make this difficult decision, but how are we going to do it? And how we're going to do it is really going to represent who we are as a brand, as we are as a culture, as people. And so doing it with that humanized approach and that compassionate approach, that, transparency, that kindness, that care, that time. And I think we did that. Even though it was a very difficult decision to make that change, to move into growth, but it's, I think we can all be super proud of the way in which we did.
Did you have sleepless nights over that transition?
Absolutely, because you're affecting people. You're making changes, you're affecting people and families, and it's not easy decisions.
No, so my experience is when I have to make difficult decisions and they're really true to my values, I have not such a hard time sleeping because in the end I believe that really is the best for others and myself. Talking about values, and I this is a favorite topic of mine. I know it is of yours, but I was wondering, your value set. Your personal value set, like when did you define that for yourself? And is that the same as for Kicking Horse?
Yeah, I think very much aligned. I mean, I approach business from a personal standpoint. I mean, I started my own business. Yeah, I think it started, in my early 20s, university. I thought I'd be going into economics. I thought I'd be going into business. I mean, I had no idea sort of first year. And I went to McGill in Montreal, and I remember walking into the management building and just looking around, and it just didn't feel right to me, and I didn't feel a fit. And I actually found the religious studies faculty, and I did a minor in women's studies. And so I really studied ethics for 4 years of my university time, and I also thought about, how I wanted to be as a woman in business and in the world, and what changes and energy I wanted to bring. And so that is very much manifested in Kicking Horse in business.
Have your values evolved over time since your studies?
Uh, um, have they evolved? They've deepened. They have not changed.
No.
When I think about, the studies I had, it was always about, environmental impact, social impact, economic impact, and Kicking Horse touches all those things, whether it's, the organic purchasing that we do with coffee, the way that we shape our culture in terms of, social changes, how we purchase fair trade coffee, which is providing that social change in coffee growing regions, and then economic, um, that idea of shared stakeholders, and shared value for all.
Um, so when we, so there's obviously needs to be a good alignment between a company's set of values and you as a leader, your values, and its purpose. Do you have a, clearly articulated purpose? Did you ever go through that exercise of articulating the purpose for Kicking Horse?
Absolutely.
What is it, if I may ask?
Yeah. So uniting goodness and prosperity. And so using, business as a platform to bring prosperity, bring goodness to society. And yeah, I think when we started, we wanted to create something different. We wanted to create a different business model that would bring those elements of humanity. And I think business has such an amazing platform to bring change and to bring good things. So as we grow, from the garage to now, working with Lavazza, it's that rub, or that challenge of continuing to grow, but to continue to grow in the ways that we should, that are aligned with our values, and bringing that goodness.
And so, is one more important than the other, values over purpose, or not, in your view?
Well, that is a really tough question. I think purpose is the, why you're doing what you're doing. It's the energy that you're bringing to your business. It's that energy, that driving element that even, on those really tough days where you're like, why am I doing this? I could be drinking a pina colada on the beach. Why am I doing this? And I think values, as I spoke earlier, are really about how you go about doing what you do. They really drive your behaviors. And so if you made me choose between, which is more important, values or purpose, I would say values, because, values drive your behaviors day in, day out. They drive your thought system, they drive what words you use, and they drive your actions. And it can certainly be owned and executed by every single person in your organization.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You mentioned drinking a pina colada on the beach. Somehow or another, I don't really believe that that's the epitome of a great time for you.
No.
In all honesty, I more see you doing a great hike or something in the mountains. And so when you're doing a great hike and you're really deeply connected to nature at that moment in time, what is it that then you say, you know what, because you undoubtedly made a ton of money selling your shares, kicking horse coffee. You know, why don't I do this all the time? Isn't this enough?
No, it's not. You know, I have a driving desire and need to share and to provide opportunity. I mean, I think it's, you know, I'm inspired by the opportunity that I created for myself many years ago. But what I'm more inspired about is creating that opportunity for others. And when I think about, you know, what I can contribute to humanity, you know, it's through work, through business, creating a beautiful container, a beautiful place for people to come to work and feel loved and feel nurtured and feel inspired and feel challenged, feel connected. When you think about people working, I mean, you're, you know, 8, 12 hours a day, you know, 5 days a week, that's a lot of time. And I think about what you can provide for people in their daily work. And so the energy and the love and the care that they can bring home to their family and their friends and their community and, you know, bring that energy to humanity. So that's what really, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
makes me emotional and you know, is really meaningful for me.
Any idea why you have that drive, maybe much more so than others?
I think you know, I'm very spiritual and I connect into that you know, spiritual essence of my life, and I nurture it and I grow it, and the more I meditate, I'm a meditator, and yeah, I connect into whatever that energy is, whatever you want to call it, God, oneness, universe, whatever. And it really fuels me and drives me and just feels so real and so connected.
Is that also something you expect of your people in your team?
Yes.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, I
There's a
think
lot
it's
of leaders on this call who are undoubtedly inspired by what you say, but then think about people in their team who might be
yeah.
wired or driven by very different things. How so? This is really interesting. How, to what extent is your view and this indeed this drive mandatory for the people you work with? Can't it, you know?
I think leading by example and setting that expectation, yet you have to be aware people are at different places in their development.
Yeah.
But we do place a strong emphasis on self-awareness and doing that work. You know, part of our priorities each year are about your personal priorities and sort of digging into, you know, you know, things that are going to feed your spirit and your soul, that are going to bring you energy. So yeah, I think you provide that opportunity for people to check in at whatever level that they're able to, wherever they are on their sort of path of growth, and yeah, and you help nurture that along the way.
Well, this is, listen, you know that most viewers are people in leading marketing and other growth functions roles. They're typically not CEOs, but more CMOs or CCOs. Um, what is your recommendation? Because what if they feel the same, but you know, they can't, they, they can't drive the culture of the entire company the way you can as co-founder and CEO. Where do you start when you're, you know, leading a function, for example, in a very large multinational, multi-matrix organization? How would you go about it? You spent time with them in the last year. What's your
Mhm.
advice to drive this, what we're just discussing?
Well, I think it's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
I don't underestimate that, but I think, you know, it certainly starts with you know, building strong relationships and building that trust and providing that time and that connection to be able to influence people and to proactively you know, communicate. Certainly not, in a, a proselytizing kind of way, but, inviting people into the conversation, yeah, being able to provide influence in that way. But I understand, it being a difficult position to be in a big organization if you are not the CEO. But I think, your role at your leadership table, can be, that driving force in bringing
Yeah,
that
well,
organization.
let's unpack this a little bit because it's good to say, you create a space and you communicate quite general terms. And I know you mean them very much and you practice it. And actually, I was just thinking, you're actually in the very same position as many of the viewers. When you think of Lavazza, Kicking
Absolutely.
Horse Coffee is a small part of Lavazza. Um, and so how do you go about, they've bought into the Kicking Horse philosophy, and you and your perspective and views and beliefs. Otherwise, they wouldn't have bought a majority share. How do you go about influencing a very large company like Lavazza, which is a very similar challenge to that of the view of most of the viewers? You talked about building trust, creating relations. Let's unpack that. Let's make that a bit practical. Can you give some examples here?
Well, I don't totally know yet, to be honest. It's certainly the opportunity that I'm going to start thinking about is how do I want to achieve that in the next couple of years. But, strategy is one thing, strategy on a piece of paper, but we all know that it's people that drive strategy and culture that drives strategy. And so being able to demonstrate the value of culture, and how it drives growth, how it drives profit, how it drives real growth in terms of humanity. One thing that we're playing with at Kicking Horse right now is, we've been working with the Kaizen system. We are a manufacturer, roaster, and so we've been doing training with Kaizen. And what's really interesting to me is how you weave values and culture and brand into the Kaizen system, and being able to provide some, quantification, and to be able to track and have that accountability for the entire organization, deep down into the organization, KPIs if you want, around values and culture, and so that it is top of mind and priority, and it is measurable if that's what you want.
Okay. Let's say that's the systemic approach to it. I guess it starts all with personal relationships and personal trust. For example, with the leadership of Lavazza, have you made an explicit effort, a conscious effort to build that relationship and trust with them?
Absolutely. I wouldn't have actually gone through with the deal if I didn't have that, 3 years ago. So there was a definite alignment and understanding, between some of the board members and the family, also the CEO and the leadership team. And so, yeah, being able to build that trust, be able to build that open relationship. I've had a standing, kind of rule or guidelines for, how I communicate with the CEO of Lavazza. And, I will always be putting up my hand if I see something, a red flag or even a yellow flag. And I've made that clear from the very beginning that I'll be providing that kind of feedback. And, if there's something that's going to be affecting Kicking Horse and negatively, in the success of us building a very long-lasting, successful company, I'll be communicating that. So, yeah, being able to have that transparency.
So it's about managing their expectations. Like these are the rules will interact by. Is that what you mean? Like I told them up front, I will raise my hand even with a yellow flag.
Yep. Absolutely.
There's a question from Emma Botten. She says, how do you recruit your team given the huge importance on spirituality, the greater good and the values-led approach? Great question, Emma. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, I've noticed as we've become clearer and clearer about our purpose and our values and our culture, it hasn't been more as a recruitment, it's been the people that are attracted to come work for us has changed and has really evolved. And so I think of you just naturally, the law of attraction, you naturally attract what you are. And so it's quite amazing, the individuals that are coming in and what they're looking for. And the next generation and what, people are looking for very much around purpose and culture and values. And the question they're always asking for, is it real? Is it real? I actually, our new VP of sales and marketing, she joined us a year and a half ago, but when she was recruited, her question to the recruiter, is this real? Reading everything about kicking horse, like, is it real? And, I think she came in and she was, testing the organization for, is this real? And it's always the feedback, it is real. And I think it's that law of attraction, and then being super clear, obviously, about what you're looking for and who you're partnering with in terms of recruiters and what kind of messaging you're putting out there is really attracting, the kind of people that you want to align with your purpose and your values.
So isn't there then the risk that you get all the same kind of people? Whereas we know from hard evidence that diversity of perspective actually just, correlates pretty strongly with growth. And I think I don't need to convince you of that. How do you ensure diversity yet, this alignment very much around purpose, what Emma calls spirituality and the greater good?
Yeah, well, I think you have to get that cultural values fit as base, bottom line, non-negotiable. If it is not that, you will be, fighting against that individual, bringing them into the organization. But you're always having a balance between, the level of expertise and experience that you need. And so you will naturally get the diversity because people are naturally at different levels, sort of in their evolution. Whether it's, age, whether it's gender, whether it's, experience, right now we've got, Canadians, Americans, Italians, and, Brits, and then, other folks, but, thinking about all the different accents that are around my leadership table and levels of experience. I think it naturally happens.
Yeah, good. So we talked a little bit about CEO perspective versus marketing perspective. As a CEO, what are the things you really want from marketing and what are the things that you really don't want from marketing?
I think of marketing in the context of my leadership team. And, I think traditionally, there's been stronger roles, whether it's finance, CFO, sales, operations. And I would want my CMO, if I had one, to be, at that same level, that same driving ownership, holding territory at my leadership team. And in fact, with our company, being very brand led, I actually would want my CMO to be more out in front, leading in the organization. And then I think about what I don't want. I want to be a leader, not a follower as a company. And so, I think marketers often, follow. follow the market, follow the data, follow the trends. And I want to be a company that gets ahead of and see down the road 10, 20 years, and to be making very strong decisions. I think about, what we decided, Kicking Horse would not be where it is today if we followed the market of 25 years ago, because organic coffee was not on the market, fair trade coffee was not on the market, and that was not an indication that was coming from the consumer or retailers, and making a bold decision and leading forward.
It's interesting though that little side sentence you said. Well, marketers typically follow. That's I think we marketers should hear that loud and clear, because I agree with you. I mean, I do think marketers should decode the world. What's happening outside should be the voice of all of these different stakeholders. But follow, I agree. You don't want that from marketing. You said we want to be, I want to be a leader. And when you said you actually meant Kicking Horse Coffee. But let's talk about Elana Rosenfeld. You are a leader, right? So what kind of leader are you?
Oh, that's a funny question, but well, I learned a long time ago that if you don't know how to lead yourself, how are you going to lead others? And so, we've talked about, that personal work that one has to do. And I think as you are a leader, and as you even escalate in your leadership, that work around self is so important, that self-awareness, that emotional intelligence, if you want. So I start there, and I think I'd lead people in that same direction, because it is evolving more of who you are. And one of our slogans or taglines of Kicking Horse is, we're coffee, so is wake up and kick ass. And that wake up and kick ass is on very many levels. It can be very simple, have a cup of coffee, wake up, go out, kick ass that day. But the wake up is really that sort of evolution of humanity, that consciousness of the world waking up. And I think I want to lead in that waking up of consciousness and humanity through a business platform.
So for a lot of people, the drive that they have, and the drive that you're definitely having and demonstrating, there's a source for that, and that often goes back to many years ago. Is there like a specific instant or context that really shaped you, and that drive that you so, I mean, you're so calm and you have so much drive, that is the fuel for that drive for you?
Well, I don't like being told what to do. And I don't like being told I can't do something. And I remember years ago when we were going to start this coffee company. And my mother said, what are you two schmucks going to do? Sell coffee out of your garage? No, you're not going into business. It's too hard. You're going to go back to school and you're going to become chiropractors. I don't know where she got chiropractors from, but that really pissed me off. And I think there's been, a bit of a driving, I'll show you attitude of my youth. And I think you have that in your youth, that drive. And I wanted to see things differently, definitely as a woman in business. And and then I think today, I talked to my team about, if I'm allowed to say this, but, I call it the fuck yeah. Like, you got to have that driving, burning sense in your belly, of, what brings you energy. And that's one of our deciding factors of how we move forward on strategic, initiatives. It's like, does it have the fuck yeah? Is it aligned with our values? And do you have that drive? Because if you don't have that drive and energy and your team doesn't have it, it's not going to get done in the way that you want to get it done. So
That's one I'm going to remember, the fuck yeah test. That's a good one. Elana, so you set out with, you described a very clear set of values. You set out with a burning energy, maybe not all from positive, but wanting to show, in this case, your mother, that you actually could do it. So everything was there, and then followed a 25-year journey. What's the most important thing that you learned along that journey that you didn't know, that you would share with the viewers? Like, don't do what I, or learn this lesson hopefully sooner than I did.
I think, when we're young, we place so much emphasis on, the intellectual capacity of what we do and what we need to, learn and experience. But again, I go back to, doing that deeper work, connecting into what feeds your spirit and your soul, whether it's, prayer, whether it's meditation, whether it's time in nature, whether it's through creative endeavors, arts, song, dance. It's being able to connect into something much deeper, and to be able to feed, that heart and soul, because the intellect is not enough. You need to feed your heart and your spirit, and that's where, the real growth through yourself, through your teams, through your organization. That's where it's going to come from.
Well, this is really a unique dimension, so I want to explore this a little bit more, because a lot of the, as I said, the viewers will be working in stock market listed companies that have very, probably not that much space for the things you're just, the self-growth, the self-awareness, meditation you mentioned. Is it true? I think Fabio, who actually got us together, mentioned that you actually also bring the meditation practice to Kicking Horse Coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my team meets once a week on Thursday mornings, and our check-in is I lead a 5-minute meditation, and that is really setting, the container or the stage for us to connect on a deeper level. And it also brings a sense of presence. People talk about mindfulness and presence, but it's about, stopping, breathing, bringing some quiet, bringing some stillness, leaving behind what's come before your day and your lists and your, what you need to do, and, really coming into your body and your space. And it's funny now because, all our folks that are working from home, we're thinking of ways to connect. And it's so interesting how many of my team will, if they've missed the meditation, or, we haven't had the meeting for a while, how many of them will say, how much they've missed the meditation. And during COVID, we're going to spend some time as a team. We're not together, but I'm going to, jump on first thing in the morning, and whoever wants to join voluntarily, we're going to meditate for 5 minutes together and start our day together and connect on that level. And it'll be interesting to see how that evolves, and how many people in the organization, commit to that time and what they get out of it.
Well, that's interesting that you mentioned the current situation with the COVID crisis. Do you see that you respond differently to traditional big corporations to the crisis?
I think we've responded extremely well. So, coming from a place, the intention of, being successful coming out of this, and really caring and compassionate for our people. So, first and foremost, obviously, was, health and safety, which we have done a fantastic job. And, the risk was, our roasting facility would be shut down, if we had any cases of COVID, and that has certainly not been the case. And then, the second piece is making sure that everybody is economically whole through the crisis, and that we do very, very well as an organization financially. And we've managed to achieve all those things, which is amazing. And in fact, we're in the coffee business, so, and primarily our business is retail. So our production, our volumes were very high during COVID, and people had to work very hard. And so we paid out extra bonuses every month. And then, come July, after we got through sort of the crisis of it, it's like asking the question, what do people need right now? Well, they need time, they need space. So we actually had a shutdown for 10 days, which we've never done in the middle of summer, to give people that break, because it was a lot for not just through work, but, as we all know, through our families. It's a very tough time. And so, I think we've focused on health and safety. We've focused on, keeping people economically whole, and then giving them some breathing space. And then as we're moving forward, we're going to be paying a lot of attention to mental health, because it's been a lot. And then thinking about our small community. And so we're going to be rolling out a local love allowance, where our employees are going to be given, an allowance of, $200 each to spend in the local community on local businesses during, October, November, when things slow down. And our local businesses are going to be having a tough time and challenge. So just, the intention is to support our local community, but also have the understanding that we are all interconnected and that we support one another. And so being able to do this. So knowing that we have been in a graced position, and using that grace wisely.
Well, that's impressive, Elana. I can't say anything else. It feels like definitely doing the right thing. It is. If I zoom out a little bit in the broader context, it's interesting because we launched this Institute for Real Growth and the multi-stakeholder value creation for the long term pre-COVID. And I think most also participants in companies were very much focused on capital markets and customers. They've always been, let's say, the prime focus. Then COVID hit, and it shifted to actually the other stakeholder groups, namely the colleagues and the community. And actually, when we did, and I think you actually participated in that probably, a poll among our participants, 3/4 said that they saw their companies making a shift towards becoming more human-centric, and marketing playing a more important role, or marketing leaders, the CMO program, felt that they had more influence to drive this more human-centric long-term strategy as a result of the COVID crisis. Do you recognize that? Is that something that you see in the businesses and the stakeholders around you as well?
Absolutely. I think, the idea of being in, there I am looking at you in your natural habitat, getting a sense of people in their homes, getting a sense of people, in their areas where they have, difficulty. This is a very difficult period for people. And, being able to turn up the volume on listening, turn up the volume on compassion, that has definitely been, something I've definitely seen.
Good, thanks. Interestingly, in one of the conversations we had leading up to this hour here, I mentioned being very impatient, and we talked about drive, and I said, I'm very impatient, maybe too much drive. And you said, oh, well, Frank, impatience doesn't go down well with people. And I thought, oops, that's, I thought there's like a positive side to impatience, this drive and so on, but you're totally right. So I learned my lesson there, and I try really to pay more attention to that, because there is not a lot of positiveness to impatience. But when we talk about you and moving forward and your growth path, first, yourself, what is it that you want to, what dimension or what trait of yourself that you want to grow in?
Well, I've built more confidence, come more into my power. Even doing something like this is really challenging for me, to be able to, articulate my beliefs and feel confident. I think that's definitely still one of my biggest challenges. And the other one, I have a little sticky note actually right here. I often anxiously avoid things. And so I have this little note about, what am I anxiously avoiding? What am I avoiding that is causing me difficulty? And so, I'm thinking about, how I can see things differently, and what I can do differently. So those are probably the two challenges that are on my plate personally.
Yeah, and that's very interesting and very open. And by the way, if you were nervous about this, it doesn't show. You're actually quite clearly articulated. So good news there. And when you think about about Kicking Horse, and then we'll talk about the business society at large. What do you see for Kicking Horse as the big challenges and opportunities for the days and years to come?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's going to be, how do we communicate what we've done, what we stand for? How do we stand for something? I mean, we still stand, for organic and fair trade coffee, but what's going to be that next piece that is really going to drive the organization, and what can we really bring to business and to the community? And then, as always, again,
what could that be, by the way? Do you have any ideas?
Well, I think it is around uniting goodness and prosperity. When you ask me about, how do you make it real, this real growth or this humanized growth, I think we have done it. We are an example of that. And so how can we share that with people? Because it's not just something we want for Kicking Horse. It's something we want to bring to the business community, and we can help be an example. When I think about, examples I've had in my lifetime, when I was younger, I looked up to Ben and Jerry's, or I looked up to, Patagonia. So, I'd like to be an inspiration, or, a proof point in terms of, uniting goodness and prosperity, being a very successful, profitable business, but in its DNA, doing good, and sort of proving out that that it can be done. Because that's the other thing, people, Elana, you're going to get bigger, and you're not going to be able to do. You're not going to be able to be what you've been. And personally, I love that challenge of continuing to grow and doing it in the right way.
I really am intrigued by this topic of ambition, right? So in Holland, where I come from, if you're too ambitious, when I remember 20 years ago when I started my own company with Mark, and we said we're going to be global marketing consultants, and we did an interview, and then in Holland there's a saying that, you chop off the grass that grows too high. So anything that sticks out, chop it off. So act as normal, don't be pretentious, etc. So real, very bold ambitions are felt as being too much self-serving or whatever. Whereas I think if what you have to give or to bring is really good, why not go much further and much bolder and push the limits hard? And obviously, you think of somebody like Elon Musk, who goes to the very extreme. Do you feel that you're really ambitious enough? Or do you feel that actually you need every now and then to be challenged to be even more ambitious? You know, why not the whole of Lavazza driving real growth? You know, things like that. How do you balance that? For this is the right ambition level for me.
Yeah, well, I think with every ambition, there has to be the element of humility. You know, at the right level, it's that balance, as we were talking about impatience and drive. You know, it has to come from a good intention. What is it that you're trying to be growing? No, sometimes I need a push. That's why I like to surround myself by people who are going to push me. And I put myself in situations that are going to push me, you know, joining the IRG. I mean, that's interesting. I've never, you know, been exposed at this level. That is a push, and it was, you know, intimidating or challenging. You know, joining Lavazza, you know, that is a push. You know, years before that, I brought in, you know, equity investors. You know, that was a push. So, you know, I know my limitations in terms of drive. And so I do partner and surround myself with people that are going to, you know, poke and prod me and push me, because I can't just do it myself. And I like working with people. I love that energy, that creativity of coming together with a group of people and being able to drive something.
Yeah. So we talked about yourself, looking forward, kicking horse, looking forward. Let's talk about the business world and all the companies represented by the viewers, by the IRG participants. What do you see as the big opportunities and challenges for the business community at large?
Things are changing. And I believe, you know, the world is waking up. There is an evolution. All the things that have happened, whether, you know, it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's the Me Too movement, you know, COVID, there is a shakeup. And this is the opportunity to pay attention and to look forward and to look to our younger generation, our 20-year-olds. I mean, they are amazing individuals with a very different view on the future. And yeah, it's making, you know, these words, this real growth, this humanized growth, real, and not just words. So again, bringing that integrity and bringing that courage, and, you know, what are the behaviors that represent those values, and acting on them, and holding each other accountable, holding yourself accountable, and holding your coworkers accountable. And yeah, and it is going to be a challenge and
Do you
an
also
evolution.
believe that, sorry, do you also believe that companies should all take more of a societal stance? Like, for example, Nike supporting Kaepernick, which is a, you know, there's people with very different views to the topic. Do you believe that companies will, you know, that consumers and stakeholders will demand much more from companies, that they speak out more explicitly what they stand for, what they're for and against, also outside the immediate remit of their business?
Yeah, I think consumers are demanding that. But, you know, companies should only do it if it's, you know, sincere and really aligned with what they are, in terms of making it real. And if there is that drive and that integrity and that, you know, authenticity, absolutely. Because, yeah, business has an amazing platform to drive. And I think, you know, the one thing I've been thinking about is trust. And I think there's been a real decline in trust worldwide. And I think organizations, I think, and this a role I want Kicking Horse to play is in building in trust, because it is a fundamental, foundational piece to society. And we need it. It's the
Yeah.
base element to every single relationship. And so if that's something that we can be driving, that would be really compelling for me.
This is almost like a perfect cliffhanger to the next, where we'll dig much deeper into the topic of trust. One that really fascinates me. I'm actually working on one of the, let's say, content deep dives for the next year's leadership program on trust, to really unpack trust and what our role as leaders, but also as companies in managing trust and feeding trust. Because I agree with you, it's the very basis of, you know, how we collaborate, how we build relationships, and so on. I hope to get to talk more with you about that topic, a really lovely one. Elana, I want to really thank you very much for your openness, for your clear articulation. You did a great job. And just for being you and being here with us and all the viewers. Akshat Pipesenia says, thank you, Elana. Very inspirational to hear your journey. I wish you the best of luck for the next endeavors. And I will take the fuck yeah on strategy into action. I think beautiful words. All viewers, thank you very much. You're invited next week when my partner in crime, Mark the Swan Aarons, will be talking with Norman de Graaf, the CMO of CVS, who has indeed quite a great story to say, to tell and share. And with that, Elana, viewers, thank you very much. Have a lovely weekend and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Frank. Bye-bye.